Hey, buddy.
Hey, man.
What up, guys?
Hey, I have a question just to kick off the whole world here. All right. And I don't know if everybody's noticed this, but I have. Are you ready? This is pretty good.
Nervous.
All right. Both of you guys. All right. So I noticed it's Cross River, and you go to your website, and there, I don't think I could find the word bank on your website. And it grabbed me, guys. It grabbed me so hard.
We've talked about it 100 times.
It's the thing that has said so much by actually not saying something. I know that was intentional. Will y'all tell me about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's no different than exactly what you're thinking about, right? Like we have walked that line for a long, long time in terms of, because what is our offering? Who are our customers? Who are our partners? You know, what are we trying to be and who are we trying to be? And it's not a question of we're not a bank. We obviously what we bring to the table from a regulatory structure, from a compliance structure, from the bank side is very important to our partners. But it's not who we are. Like who we are is probably more tech than bank. And we've like I say this to my CEO all the time. We have become experts at walking that line. We're probably taking when we did this, we took a slighter step more onto the tech side, and you're going to see that more and more. But we haven't compromised anything in the process, meaning the fact that it doesn't say bank doesn't mean a goddamn thing outside of like, we just don't associate that way, right?
I just to add a little bit there. And it's all over the bank, right? It's not just the website, it's our branding, it's what we wear. I know I prefer to be in this as opposed to a suit. I don't know how Phil feels, but I
miss my suit.
It's a culture thing, right? It's while we do perform as a bank, we bring the responsible nature of a bank, and we take that very, very seriously. There's really a culture here of a tech company, right? And there's the various departments that we have, and I think this is what I appreciate most of the bank is there's a diversity of perspectives, right? We have the tech guys, we have the traditional bankers, we have the institutional bankers, and I think that's really the beauty of what the bank is, or what the tech company is really the ability to mesh both worlds, right? The banking side, the tech side. And at the end of the day, we just think we're cooler because we're a tech company and we get to wear cool sweatshirts.
Well, can I tell you, I'll tell you a great story. When I first started here, I went to all the traditional bank trades. And I said, hey guys, we want to join. We want to be more active and engaged. They said, well, look, we'd love to collect your fees and your dues, but like, we're not going to advocate for your FinTech stuff. Like that's not, kind of who our membership is. And we're like, all right. We went to the tech guys and said, hey guys, like we want to join. We're more of a tech company. They're like, you're a bank. You're not cool enough for us. Right. And so we really, at that point, realized like, oh shit, we got to create our own, right? We got to be our own entity. And the challenge is sort of like, okay, so who's your competitor, right? Our competitor, and I know you hear this a lot, our competitor doesn't exist, right? Like there's just no one who's doing what we do. And that's, inherently kind of the good and the bad all at the same time.
Well, we're watching you guys evolve over the years,
right?
Yeah, and it's really been a cool kind of stand back and watch this happen. And I've learned a lot just watching you on how you do things. And I use you guys almost every day in an example one way or another. And for those of you watching what we're talking about here, this is the #1 sponsor bank in the country. These are the guys
and the OGs, man.
Yeah, man, that's what I was going to say. These are the OGs of sponsor banking, because I'm going to go out on a limb here and go, there's probably not a drive-through there, right? And these guys have built this thing to be a sponsor bank.
And deliberately.
It wasn't like most of the sponsor banks where they're a bank that kind of fell over a business client to become a sponsor bank. This was an intentional act at a time when nobody else is really even thinking of it. And you've got the respect of all of the technology companies, we'll call them FinTechs, everybody's a FinTech anymore. And you also have a chartered bank. You've got the ability, you also help other banks, which is pretty cool. #1 in PPP.
Very few banks do as much for the industry of banks as Cross River does, like stewards of the industry hugely.
Can you guys kind of, talk to other bankers for a second, tell them what you do?
I say this a lot, and it's not going to come as a surprise. I'm fairly certain I said this with you guys when I came down to visit, was traditional banks need to innovate today, otherwise they will not be around tomorrow, period, end of story. Now that is sometimes controversial, but I'm very proud. I'll say it to you and I'll say it to traditional bankers. You've got to think about what the future of financial services looks like. And if it's not about what banks need for banks, it's what consumers want from their banks, period. And so today, you don't need to be a bank to offer banking services. I mean, we talk about this a lot. Our goal is not just to power FinTech companies, whatever that means, right? What's a FinTech company today? Our goal is to enable anybody to be a FinTech company, right? The idea of embedded financial services that, your shoemaker can now give you a loan, right? I mean, you think about what you're able to do, right? When you embed your financial services in a reliable, responsible way that follows regulatory structure and consumer compliance. I mean, you've got the best of both worlds, not because banks are forcing it down your throat. It's quite the opposite. It's what consumers today are demanding. I mean, we talk about COVID a lot today, and you think about what we did through contactless payments, right? Real-time payments networks, right? The idea of push to card, enabling people to move money in real time, in a safe way, when they want it, on their own terms.
Before we go there, I've got all kinds of cool stuff I want to talk to you guys about. That's all in there. Your direct bank. I want to talk about all the different payment formats, the Dwala relationship, all that stuff. But I want to tell a story first. Okay. Talk about, is this bank friend or foe to banking? I think at this point, you're probably getting the hint that they're a good thing, not a bad thing for banking. They're
Right.
also the leader, because they're so far out there, they look like a star at night. Is it something to emulate? Of course. You have to do all of it. No, you can do any part of this that you want, and they're going to help you do it. And I want to tell you a story. Okay. So these guys are meeting with the VP, and I don't mean the VP of the bank. I mean the VP of the US, doing all these cool things all the time. And they were invited to come down to the roundup that we put on every year for all the sponsor banks to get together and talk about different things. And one of the things they've been gracious enough to do is come each year to our conference and kind of help the other bankers out. Eugene hops from Jersey to DC down here, gets here the night before at Lukenbach, runs into me, and he's like, I got just a little bit of time in the morning. I've got to catch an airplane back. Okay, this guy literally goes back, spends the night, gets up the next morning, gives a 30-minute presentation, and then hauls ass for the airport. This is incredible.
Writing in to save the day, man.
Yeah, I'm sitting here going, hey, man, you don't need to do this. You don't need to. He's like, there is no way that we're going to miss the opportunity.
I absolutely. So I just want to say I absolutely deserve no credit for that. For me, it was an absolute honor to be there. And I'm just glad I got to experience the most important part, which was having drinks with you guys in Lukenbach, right? So for me, honestly, it was a pleasure. And you guys, I think you guys stand for the best parts of the industry in terms of making sure that finding ways for all of us to collaborate, right? And, just being in that room, there was an energy, and it wasn't just a traditional conference. There was an energy in that room that we're all here to talk to each other in plain terms, to really figure out what the best way we could all potentially collaborate is. And for me, it's, that was my second roundup. I knew what to expect going in, but every year it gets better and better. And honestly, it was a pleasure to be there.
It's amazing when I see this kind of stuff, when people have counted out the industry.
Well, look, you guys.
Phil, I just wanted to say, Phil and I fight for who gets to go to Texas every year. So
it's actually a true story.
There's not a lot of convincing that needs to get done. We just like being there, and for us, it serves a purpose, right, and a larger purpose. So we appreciate.
I'll put an exclamation point on that, guys. Like you talk about, like kind of sort of what we do and how we do it. I told my story about kind of the traditional banking trades and the technology banking trades, right? And there's very few that kind of see the pragmatic, sort of value of combining it, right? And bringing folks together and sort of helping each other, right? It's sort of, we live in a very dog eat dog world. You guys sort of took a different approach and said, wait a second, how do we do this differently, right? And not, when I say differently, not just in the cowboy hats, but also in terms of like really collaborating, like and I remember my first year and I came and I kind of wasn't sure what to expect, but like very tech forward tech companies sitting with very traditional community banks. And actually and you talk about, we talk about this all the time at the conference. The conference happens 24 hours a day, right? It's not just when you're sitting listening to a speech. It's when you're at the bar, when you're sort of at the cocktail hour, and you can actually have a real conversation about, hey, wait a second, I can't embrace everything you're doing, but that piece of what you're doing, that speaks to me, and I can, we can maybe implement that as an organic way to enable growth. And then the tech company says, oh, wait a second, we can't, fully embrace everything you're doing because it's, we just can't do it, but we like a piece of what you're doing. And so, yeah, I give you guys a lot of credit because there's very few who want to walk that line with us, and we look for those partners and embrace it.
Here's something cool. So that the first one that we did just years ago, there was Clayburg Bank. Brad Womack was there, and he listened and learned from everybody and wanted to talk with you and different folks there and learn. And then they end up creating a product that they sell out of their bank now to other banks. So they became actually one of the vendor sponsors at the roundup at the same time they're one of the banks attending the thing.
Cool.
Wow, that's exactly the way it's supposed to go. So hats off to you guys. Appreciate everything. Let me get a couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
So write these down. Okay.
There'll be a quiz.
There will damn sure be a quiz at the end of this. I guarantee it.
Uh-oh.
Okay. I want to go over some things. I made some notes here. I want to talk about your payment APIs and specifically the Dwolla piece, especially when it relates to RTP. I want to talk about cross-river crypto. Let's talk about 376 fintechs that are doing a banking function out there. I really would like to hit a little bit on Bricks Direct, what you're doing there with your direct bank, and particularly let's have a conversation about what you're doing for other banks that they don't even know you're doing on the legislative front. I always go back and tell the story about the brokered deposits and the good work that Phil did on all that.
Unreal.
For everybody. You've
Not,
got your
not to
consumer
mention
loan
just
program.
smart. There's, a couple of dozen people that could even have that conversation, much less be as forward and out there, right? It's these guys just, awesome. I love it.
If cover all that as fast as you can and do what you can with it here in the time that we have allotted to help you, for you guys to help other bankers. I appreciate
Holy
it.
cow. That's a lot to unpack. So let's just start with, this comes from our leadership, right? And our CEO, Gilles Gade, is sort of a pioneer, right? Really on the forefront. Our success has not been because of our ability to, sort of make hard left turns. It's because of our ability always to see around the curve, right? And the thought for us is not about oh crap, what do I have to do tomorrow? It's what am I doing next year? And where is the industry going in 3 years from now? So I can start to think about that today to best prepare. And that's kind of where Eugene and I started here. The thought was, from a regulatory structure back in 2015, nobody was talking about fintech, not in the industry, and definitely not in the halls of Congress or in state capitals across the country. Today, it's all they're talking about. You turn on the news, that's all you hear about. We were, sort of, and I like to think, and I hope I'm allowed to say this, the genius of our CEO was very simply in that he kind of saw around the curve and said, hey, we're doing something that's interesting here. Let's make sure everybody's aware of it. Let's be as transparent as possible. Let's sort of over communicate so that if there is criticism, if there is critique, if people have better ideas, we want to implement those ideas. And so we actually started with a very simple plan of literally just telling our story wherever we can, however we can. Here's what we're doing. Here's how we're engaging. Here's how we're thinking about the expansion of access to financial services. And it continued to evolve, mostly because we continue to look about how we're going to see around the corner. And when you look around the curve, people naturally gravitate towards it, right? People want to be a part of that. And I think when you look at our, I think that when you look at our progression, right, started in the online lending space. I think when we met for the first time, it was mostly talking about originating loans for online lenders. Quickly evolved into the payment space, right? But not just in our own technology that we built for the payment space, but we were the smallest at the time, and I'm not sure where it is today. At the time, we were the smallest bank to join the Clearinghouse Real-Time Payments Network, right? And we're able to do it, and then utilize that same technology to empower folks like Dwolla, right? And others, which you're going to hear about in the coming weeks, which is only going to continue to evolve. And then, like I said, right, in the crypto space, but at each step, it was an organic progression of how do we continue to empower consumers? How do we continue to stay ahead of the curve? And how do we continue to build our own technology? And this is the hardest part. How do we continue to stay technology forward?
Yeah.
Always, right? Because if we don't, if we're creating a hindrance for tech companies to grow, then they're not going to want to partner. Our success has come from our ability to grow our own technology as quickly as the tech companies we partner with. And so if you do that, then they grow with you, right? And so as a great example of that, I think one that most people have heard of, right? A company called Affirm that does point of sale lending for the biggest industries, and they recently partnered with Amazon to do installment loans at point of sale. Affirm says, look, we want to offer consumers more options. So how do we do that? And so today we also offer them savings accounts, right? And so if you can go to Affirm and we build the technology that they don't have to worry about what else do we want to offer? How can we offer it? Oh, we have a partner like Cross River. We want to offer X, Y, or Z, and we know that they have the tools in their toolbox to offer that. And so, again, the idea is always being industry forward, but best foot forward, making sure that we're continuing to evolve. Obviously, like I said, I said this early, and I said it kind of in passing, but it's true. The idea is to enable anybody to offer financial services in the way in which you would expect it to be done, which is fair, affordable, safe, with a level of compliance that consumers can use it. Technology companies can feel safe knowing that they're building out on best practices, and that we have the technology, our own proprietary technology that will enable continued growth.
So let me ask you something. This is great stuff, man. And for the bankers out there, oh my goodness, they're not kidding when they say they have a toolbox of technology. And we talked a second ago about card to card. We're talking to MasterCard, Visa, push to card. Visa calls that Visa Direct. Everybody's got their different version of this, but it is take a card and push money to another card.
It's coming.
Game changer, cool stuff.
It's coming.
How much of these technology forward things that Cross River does should another bank look at employing themselves as opposed to come to you? And why would they want to come to you?
And would it be fair to say, Phil, obviously, I mean, we worked with you guys. You don't exactly employ vendors, you have partners, right? Even those that provide you with technology. But would it be fair to say that those that you do use as your providers just freaking love you? I think that's been our experience.
That's the deal, right?
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, this is going to branch off into 12 different stories after this. But I'll start with when Congress in March of 2020 introduced the CARES Act and the thought of PPP loans and the Paycheck Protection Program and making those loans, the initial thought was a bank could only lend to what it had in its balance sheet, right? You can only lend what you have. Mm-hmm. And that was before the Fed opened up its window. And so we really didn't know how we were able to maximize our impact and really get dollars out. And so we quickly partnered with a technology company called Mantle. And we had been talking to them for a while to automate, our own CD offerings and how do we, sort of generate liquidity. And so we partnered with Mantle and we said, look, we need to raise money, really quickly, right? We want to make as many loans as possible. And right now we're bound by how much money we have on our balance sheet. And so how do we do that more? And so we partnered with Mantle, which was a leading technology company for providing, and I'm fairly certain you guys have worked with them and a lot of community banks have worked with them.
Sponsor and come to the roundup.
Well, there you go, right? And so Mantle was a great partner. And we said to them, look, it's end of March. Congress is thinking about rolling out this program in the next couple of weeks. How quickly can we get you guys on board and set up a program? And I don't want to get this wrong, and so don't quote me on this, but I think it was about 16 days. We raised $250 million in CDs that we took online. Now, again, we offered a great rate. We drove traffic that way, but we're able to build a program and get it operational in 15 days to raise $250 million. Right. Remember, by the way, for the sole purpose
nobody's going to jail, right?
Right.
No. For just the opposite. I mean, we went through all due diligence, but for the sole purpose of trying to get more money out the door to help small businesses, right? And when I talked to Mantle after, and I've gotten fairly close with their team, and I said, guys, I'd be curious to get your sense. Have you done this before? Look, and they said we've done a lot of things, but to get a program like this up and running as quickly as we did, as well as we did, requires a different breed of bank. And so that's why I say we're, you know, what you said is exactly right. They're not a service provider, they're our partner, right? And it required kind of the cohesion and the collaboration of both teams to get together, figure out where the pressure points are, make sure it worked, and get a program up and running. And at the end of the day, it's what we did. And PPP, right, which transitions right into PPP, it's exactly what we did with PPP, right?
So I'd love,
Yeah,
Bill, if I can, I'd love to talk a little bit more so about the kind of the flip side of that, right? And how we ultimately, I mean, the PPP story, I think, deserves a full documentary, but I think what's important is also on the collaboration piece and enabling community banks is talk about our partnership with Unity National Bank. They came to us with a problem. Hey guys, we have a ton of consumers that, I mean, every bank was dealing with this, but they in particular, they're an MDI, they're the largest MDI in Texas. And, you know, we recognized the value in the support that we could provide them in terms of reaching underserved communities, particularly low and moderate income underserved communities. And they came to us with a real world problem. Hey guys, we can't deliver these loans quick enough. You know, we understand that you're doing these, you're partnering with a lot of different companies in getting loans out. And during PPP, I think we had about 50 different partners, technology companies like QuickBooks. And then Unity National Bank was an interesting partner because they were another bank, right? They had almost a very similar ability to us. And, you know, for us, that partnership, I think, was so important because we were able to enable them from a tech standpoint and ultimately help them deliver loans to consumers that didn't have anywhere else to go. And look, that resonates all throughout the work that we were able to do in PPP. And look, we're extraordinarily proud of the amount of loans that we did. We did close to 500,000, but what's most important for us is the businesses that we ultimately reach, right? The smallest businesses in the country, those businesses that couldn't go anywhere else, mostly sole proprietors, independent contractors. And our average loan size was, I think in the first round, it was lowest. It was one of the lowest in the nation. In the second round, I think it was at 33,000. So really, really proud of that work. And, you know, our partnership team here at the bank, you know, they focused on not only partnering with companies that ultimately would help us deliver them the most amount of loans, but also companies that would help us deliver those loans with a purpose, right? And making sure that, you know, people were getting access where they couldn't before.
Let me hit this real quick. While the big guys are cherry picking which loans they're going to do that's best for them and their big dog clients, you're out here helping another bank servicing minorities, servicing community development areas so that those loans can get to the right people that need it the most at the fastest pace possible. Does anybody see what's happening?
Heroics, man.
This is heroics in banking.
And it's the definition of community banking, right? Like that is the ethos.
This is the stuff that gets me charged up. I really like this. This is great.
The funniest part,
a lot of things here that people.
The best part is that, like, it's heart and soul, right? Like, you know, it's my CEO loves to say it. I get choked up, right? Like you do well when you do good, right? And so when you're focused on, like, I'm just going to do good work, right? Like I'm just going to focus on good work, you'll do well, right? Like the rest will come later. Just focus on doing good work. And that's kind of where we started in 2008. We referenced this early. Post-recession, while everybody was exiting the banking industry and everybody was de-risking, we recognized an opportunity to serve the community, period. And when you do good, you're going to do well. And that's kind of where it all started. And it continued all the way through to PPP. It starts from the top, right? And you set out kind of the right
corner. And it's crazy when you're trying to look around that corner and do something good, how much the Lord will give you vision on these things. So great to see it happen. Hey, Eugene, talk to us about crypto. Crypto.
So I think like everything else, and Phil kind of told this story a little bit earlier. I think like everything else, we want to make sure that we're consistently looking around the bend. I think at this point, it's undeniable that crypto is becoming part of the mainstream banking industry, right? And really moving under the regulatory traditional structure. And I think for us, when you look at a company like Coinbase, and we really provide them access to traditional payments, when you look at a company like Coinbase, ultimately, I think they want to deliver a product, but also make sure that product is responsible, that, you know, it's helping people and really working within the guidelines of helping people by delivering a better solution in terms of moving money or storing money or whatever that is, but also that it's within the guidelines of the traditional regulatory structure. So, you know, going back, and Phil told the story a little bit, but when I first joined the bank, I remember Gilles talking to me about banking as a service. At that point, I had no idea what it was. It completely went over my head. And he's like, hey, I need you to build out a deck about this. And I'm like, how am I going to do this, right? No one in the US was talking about it at that point. There was some research being done in Europe and across the world. And some people were slowly getting into it, but not the way that Gilles wanted to get into it. And then very quickly after, he started talking to us about crypto, and particularly how we could incorporate crypto in our advocacy efforts in Congress. And, you know, at that point, congressional representatives did not even understand online lending, really, right? And it was too early for us to go and have these crypto conversations. But I think, you know, with what we've seen with the pandemic and how that's accelerated the development of financial services, particularly being delivered through digital channels, crypto is becoming mainstream, right? And I think there's a lot that we could provide. And you know, you'll be hearing news as soon as we're ready to announce it. But I think there's a lot of places where traditional banks.
You're like dangling it in front. Like,
look, there's a lot of places where traditional banks could play, right? There's a lot of ways that traditional banks, or, you know, banks that are in the middle of banking and tech could really play in the crypto space. And, you know, we're certainly exploring and excited to.
I have a feeling they're about to tell us something good.
Yeah. So let me just say,
I almost tell you.
What Eugene is saying is right.
Stop, Eugene. Stop.
We recognize the limitations. We recognize the limitations of traditional banking, of traditional cores, right? Like you guys hear about it every single day. I remember that was my first. I remember that first roundup I did. That was the topic. Like, how are we going to get around? We've, as I've said a number of times, we've built our own technology. We're building on our own core that's enabling interesting companies to do interesting things without any compromising, right? The question you're seeing more and more, and I think there was actually something from the Blockchain Association that came out today that, like, you know, it's, you know, anybody who's going to stand in the way of innovation is standing in the way of consumers, right? Like, and like constituents, or your constituents are going to hear. There was some variation of that from the Blockchain Association. And to me, it's not here or here. It's not one against the other, right? There are ways to do it, ways for everybody to walk down the middle together to ensure that consumers are able to access their crypto when they want to access it, how they want to access it, in the safety and within the regulatory structure that they've come to expect. And so we've proven time and time again that you can power the digital economy without compromising on anything you expect in financial services. And that's where we've positioned ourselves. And it's not, you don't have to take my word for it. We have done it time and time again. And so today it's about the on and off ramps for companies like Coinbase and so many other companies that are coming online. Tomorrow, trust me when I tell you, it's going to be about so much more, but we haven't lost our focus on making sure we're transparent and that we're communicating it at every turn.
I get so excited and jazzed up here because we're the same way. I mean, people want to talk about cryptocurrency, and it's like, I don't want to talk about that.
If we get rid of currency and talk about the
technologies that are going on behind the scenes, because that's where tomorrow is. And that's kind of what you're kind of saying between the lines is like, the hell with Bitcoin, guys. Let's talk about the technology of blockchain and how we can utilize that to replace the current ACH payment system and the other outdated things that we have in place right now. And here's the key. You also said this word over and over, and I caught it. it's compliance, safety, things that are missing in that food chain today. We've got the pieces put together. They're just not 100% right. And if you're not sure about that, call Coinbase and ask them about my account. So these things aren't perfect, but we're getting there. And once we do build this out, it's going to be companies like you and banks like you. I said a company.
You had it right. No. You had it right. You had it right the first time.
You're welcome.
Eugene got you, dude.
He got me,
He
man.
sucked you in.
He did it again.
He did.
He does it every time.
Man.
Okay.
Awesome.
You guys are doing really good with what you're doing. Let's talk about your direct bank real quick. Bricks Direct.
Bricks Direct was when we created, going back to the Mantle solution, when we created the Mantle solution, we wanted to make sure that, again, you're talking about a different type of product. Even though we fintechized it, it was a traditional product, right? We also needed to create something different than, sort of what our actual branch product looked like. And so it was a mechanism of creating a separate line where consumers know they're getting sort of merge the trust and reliability of a community bank with the innovative offerings of a technology company. And so we created that as a first step. The question really becomes, what's the next step, right? And we've just, and I'm sure you've heard the news, we just acquired a company called BetterFin. Obviously, before that, we acquired a company called PureIQ, but BetterFin specifically more in the how are we going to revolutionize and evolve the small business lending space, right? What we saw post PPP was that small businesses, sadly, even in today's world, especially in today's world, don't have the access to financial services that they deserve, especially in rural and minority communities, period. And so how do we bridge that gap? And we recognize in PPP that by introducing technology, you create that opportunity to democratize the system. Now, democratize is a word that too often is used by tech companies, right? I don't want you to take my word for it. I'm not trying to create something that is pie in the sky and it sounds good, but we can't actually do it. PPP demonstrated to the world what you and I and us have been talking about for years. And we showed it. We put it on full display for the world to see exactly what we can do. The question now becomes, what's the next step? And so, again, acquiring a company like BetterFin, combining that with our own proprietary technology that we already have, we're really gonna put sort of banking on steroids. And again, it's not what you would expect. It's what you would expect from a tech company. And so that's why you keep seeing that, run up against that line, right? Because it's it's the innovative offerings of a technology company that we continue to evolve us and make us the entity that we are.
Hey, as we get to final thoughts here and wrap this up with you guys, I want to invite you to do what we call one of our fold-in events in Bankers Helping Bankers. We just had one today on security. I'd love it if you guys would talk to your everyday community banker in our platform, or I should say their platform, it's the bankers, and let them understand a little bit of ways that y'all could collaborate together. Y'all have such a strong message. And I also want to just say, I think the hope that you bring to community banking is a message that needs to be heard. And it's not always, hey, if we can do it, you can do it, but you're so willing to help. And you're so willing to you shine light on paths other people didn't even know existed. And I'd like to invite you to do that if you guys would like to do that, and then give us your final thoughts on anything.
Yeah.
I would say absolutely, but only if we could dress the same way and coordinate our outfits.
I want to know
You can
before
drink
we
a
go up.
beer.
How do I get one
you
of
can do
those?
whatever you want.
I want one of those cool jackets, man.
I almost just spit my water out. I'm sorry. It goes, I'll tell you this, in closing thought, and firstly, I concur with Eugene. I should have planned better today because I should have busted out my cowboy hat. Which, I did purchase on my last trip out there. But let me say, regardless from a community bank standpoint, what you're looking for. I mean, we have capital markets solutions where we have opportunities to work with you and our capital markets team to help community banks, whether it's purchasing assets or in other ways. We've really developed a broad capital markets team that is looking to partner with other community banks who want a piece but can't wrap their brain around it all, but just want a tiny piece. And we're willing to work with you if you want it all, right? You really want to, like I said, embed financial services and create opportunities to reach your consumers in the way that they want to be reached. I'll end with a very quick story. I mean, this is a couple years ago, and so I hope things have evolved, but I met with a US senator who said the words to me, well, why do they need your services? Can't people just go into a bank? And I kind of like, I laughed and I said, well, I mean, they could go into a bank, but they don't want to, right? Like, it's not about what, it's like, it's like telling a constituent calls your office and says, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And they say, you don't want to do that. It's like, but I'm your constituent, right? Like, this is what I want. We have to follow the consumer. What do the consumers want? How do they want to access their financial services? How do they want to access their cryptocurrency, their payment solutions, whether you're a you're a gig economy worker, or you're just someone who needs access to services that today exist because of technology. Our goal is to empower the companies that power those consumers. And like I said, I don't want you to take my word for it. We have done this successfully since day one, and we're going to continue to build on that success, hopefully with partners like you guys.
Well, and for the bankers out there that if you need proof in the pudding, give us a call. We'll show you all kinds of data and show you the things that they've done. They wouldn't be here if they weren't good.
Very. Maybe arguably the best and like the single most profitable thing I've ever seen. So
Yeah,
love you guys. Hats off to you. I mean,
you're talking to the number one right here.
not a question.
Thank
I
you.
love you guys. Thank you.
I needed
so
this
much.
confidence boost, by the way. Guys, thank you so much. We really
Guys.
enjoy our time with you. Thank you, as always.
We're riding with the Cowboys.